My best friend didn't stab me in the back. He rewrote my future, line by line, until my name vanished from the company we built together, replaced with his smile, his suit, his lie. While I lay on a mattress in a one-bedroom apartment, bankrupt and blocked on every platform, he stood on national television, calling me a dreamer with no business sense. But behind the silence, I wasn't grieving. I was rebuilding. And when I returned, I didn't knock. I detonated everything he thought was his. This is how I turned betrayal into blueprint and made him choke on the empire he stole. My best friend once said I was the brains of our operation. He'd smile and clap me on the back after every late-night coding session, telling me I was a genius, his secret weapon. We were building something extraordinary, something that could change the way wearable health tech interacted with real-time AI. He handled the pitch decks, the investor meetings, the glossy smiles. I built the engine, the heartbeat, the thing that made it all work. We met in college, two broke kids with big ideas and a shared hatred for the word impossible. Over ramen and spilled coffee, we dreamed about changing the world. We slept on air mattresses and coded through migraines. We called each other brother. I thought he meant it. The week before our pitch to a major VC fund, we were closer than ever to something real. Our prototype was stable. Our traction data was clean. Our slides were ready. I had spent 14 straight hours debugging one minor issue with the live feedback loop. And finally, it was perfect. We agreed to do one final prep session the night before. I logged off, exhausted but proud. I told him, "We're ready." Then, everything went dark. The next morning, I couldn't log into the server. My credentials had been revoked. I tried our shared inbox. Deleted. Our Slack workspace. Gone. I called him, straight to voicemail. Checked the state filing portal. The company we started together, the name we chose on a napkin in our second year, was now registered solely under his name. All the IP, all the patents, everything. No warning, no explanation, just a text that came in at 8:13 a.m., still pinned at the top of my screen. "Sorry, bro, it's just business." And just like that, my life's work wasn't mine anymore. I'd poured 6 years, every cent I had, and every ounce of trust into a dream I thought we shared. But he walked away with the spotlight and left me in the shadows, penniless, erased, and humiliated. I had nothing left. I'd emptied my savings account to fund our prototype, sold my car, drained my emergency fund, maxed out 2 credit cards just to keep the project alive through that final stretch. I believed in what we were building. I believed in him. And now, everything I'd built, every sleepless night, every bug fixed, every late invoice pushed back, was gone. Taken. The landlord changed the locks the same week my name was erased from the company's website. I packed what I could into 3 cardboard boxes and moved into a 1-bedroom unit that smelled like damp carpet and someone else's regret. I tried calling him, once, then twice, then 10 more times. Straight to voicemail. Eventually the line went dead altogether. I was blocked. Then came the interview. I hadn't eaten that day. I was sitting on a milk crate in my new living room, the walls bare and echoing, when I saw him on TV. He wore the suit we picked out together. Used the same pitch lines we'd rehearsed over and over. Only this time, he stood alone, grinning at the camera like he'd built everything himself. They called him a pioneer, a visionary, the mind behind the tech. And when the interviewer asked about me, asked if it was true he had a co-founder once, he chuckled, and said, "He was a dreamer, no business sense. Honestly, it's better this way." I didn't cry. Not then. I just stared at the screen while my chest hollowed out like someone had scooped me clean. I looked around the room, at the cracked blinds, the broken ceiling fan, the silence, no applause, no cameras, no justice. Then I reached for the old USB. It was still in the side pocket of my laptop bag, the one piece of the past I hadn't dared to open. I held it in my hand, fingers trembling, and stared down at the only thing that proved I was ever there. The original code. My code. Everyone else had moved on, but I hadn't. And I wouldn't. By now, you might think it's over. that the dream died, that the story ends in silence. But trust me, this is where the real story begins. Are you ready for what he did next? The irony was brutal. I was coding again, not for some grand vision, but for rent money. A freelance gig here, a contract job there, stitching together back-end systems for startups that reminded me too much of what I'd lost. I worked late into the night, eating noodles cold from the container, sleeping beside tangled wires and an old laptop that still held fragments of the future I once believed in. My bank account was thin, my spirit thinner, but something inside me refused to go completely dark. Then it happened. One client accidentally sent me a shared folder, sloppy permissions, a lazy oversight. In it was a file with my original architecture embedded deep in the system tree. I knew the structure, like I knew my own heartbeat. But what stopped me cold was the metadata, authored by me, time-stamped from months ago, and beneath the document's notes, my name, my digital signature, the code he'd stolen, unchanged at its core and now powering his empire. He hadn't even bothered to rewrite it. That's when the anger stopped burning and turned into something colder, sharper. A week later, I ran into my old mentor at a dusty hardware conference I almost skipped. He saw the shadows under my eyes, asked where I'd been, what I was working on. I told him the truth, for the first time in months. And instead of pity, he gave me something else. A name. A lawyer who specialized in IP theft. And an angel investor who had once turned down my ex-partner's pitch because something didn't smell right. I didn't rush. I studied. I read patent filings by flashlight. I traced every line of my original build. I designed something better, smarter. A rebuild from the ashes, with an embedded feature that would not only detect stolen architecture, but flag it publicly. An anti-plagiarism AI, dressed as innovation, wired with purpose. They thought I was just a techie. They forgot I was the tech. I wasn't confused, I wasn't delusional, and I damn sure wasn't dead. I didn't start with fire, I started with facts. The first move was subtle, a formal request filed with the patent office for a comparative code audit. Just a bureaucratic process, no fanfare. But I knew exactly what I was looking for. Embedded deep within the source files of his patent submission was my original build, my syntax, my timestamps, my digital signature. The audit came back showing a 78% match to the prototype I had sent him via email months before the official launch. That email, now archived, carried a precise timestamp and metadata trail that even he couldn't scrub. I passed everything to my attorney, a seasoned tech litigation expert, the kind of person who spoke in clauses and moved in silence. Within 48 hours, a cease and desist letter landed on his legal team's desk, detailing the infringement. It was polite, professional, and lethal. But that wasn't the strike. That was just the echo before the impact. The strike came later. On the same day his company was scheduled to unveil its much-hyped software update, I launched mine. Quietly. Precisely. No interviews. No countdown. Just a clean site, a sleek interface, and one headline feature that stole all the oxygen in the room. An AI-powered plagiarism detection engine. Designed specifically for machine learning and neural mapped wearables, it could scan software behavior in real time and cross-check it against thousands of proprietary code patterns, including his. The data? Already loaded. Hundreds of internal logs collected, verified, signed, showcasing the bleeding trail of stolen architecture and masked copywork. He didn't see it coming, until the screen froze in front of him, until his CTO turned pale, reading the message flagged across their internal comms. And then came the email. Just one line in the subject field. No greeting, no body, just, "We know what you did." That was the first punch. I wasn't here to win politely. No, I wanted to go biblical. Do you feel that? That shift in power? It started with silence. But in just a moment, the entire tech world will hear the truth. It started with a ripple, just a single post from a mid-tier developer forum dissecting the latest update from his company. Buried deep within the comments, someone posted a forensic breakdown of the software's back-end structure. The language was clinical, but the conclusion wasn't. Significant portions of the new code were copied, line for line, from a previously submitted AI model. Mine. And the timestamp didn't lie. Within hours, the ripple became a wave. Tech blogs picked up the story, each more aggressive than the last. Innovation or imitation? Is the visionary CEO just a rebranded thief? By the end of the day, hashtags were trending, and public sentiment shifted from admiration to suspicion. Journalists started digging. Investors started calling. One of the largest VC firms, the one that had poured millions into his startup, publicly demanded a full internal audit. Their press release used words like due diligence and concerns over intellectual integrity, but between the lines it screamed, "We don't trust you anymore." And then came the subpoena. Delivered to his gleaming glass headquarters in front of half the staff and a stunned receptionist, the legal envelope bore the seal of the U.S. Intellectual Property Court, a mandatory hearing, allegations of code theft, evidence attached. He tried to call me, twice, left a voicemail, something frantic about misunderstandings, about fixing this between us. But the moment I saw his name flash across my screen, I smiled and hit block. Instead, I sent one message. No greeting, no explanation. Just, "It's public now. Good luck." They said he paced his office for hours after that, yelling into his phone, flipping through printouts with shaking hands. His assistant quit that same afternoon. His head of engineering went silent online. By morning, several PR articles had been quietly removed. A speaking engagement was postponed indefinitely. And for the first time since all this began, he went silent. And just when you think it can't get more poetic, oh, it does. Want to know what real justice tastes like? Keep watching. There's a kind of silence that doesn't come from peace. It comes from precision. And I chose that silence the day I signed the final paperwork. I bought the building, the one we started in, the same concrete floors we paced barefoot at 2 a.m., fueled by ramen and reckless ambition, the same space where we dreamed big, coded latte, and swore we'd never become the very people we despised. He thought it was long gone, leased out, forgotten. But I tracked down the owner, made an offer over asking, and signed with a smile. I didn't gut the place. I preserved it. The original brick wall stayed. The cracked window in the conference room, still cracked. I even left the break room untouched, except for one addition. A single photo, framed and backlit. It was us, years ago, grinning like idiots with startup sweatshirts and coffee stains on our sleeves. Beneath it, a brass plate engraved with 6 simple words. This time, it's mine. And I meant it. I rebuilt everything from the inside out. A new name on the door, a new company culture rooted in integrity and brilliance, without shortcuts. The kind of company people wanted to work for. And they came. One by one, the talent from his side jumped ship. Engineers, analysts, even his executive assistant. Each departure a silent indictment. One of them said it felt like coming home. Then came the final twist. A banking freeze order landed on his company's accounts. Investor panic had turned into legal paralysis. And as the sun rose over downtown, he pulled up in his tinted SUV and stared up at the office tower. The same one we once called ours. Only now, the name etched into the marble facade was mine. No drama, no confrontation. Just him, standing on the sidewalk, shoulders tight, fists clenched, watching as his empire slipped away, brick by brick, email by email, person by person. He never stepped inside. He didn't have to, because sometimes the most brutal revenge is letting them live with the view. So, revenge? That was just the beginning. What comes next isn't about payback. It's about purpose. Let me show you what real victory looks like. Success, when it finally came, didn't feel like fireworks. It felt like exhale. The office was quieter now. No all hands clapping to the beat of launch day. No investors parading in with forced enthusiasm. just the soft hum of focused minds, the clink of ceramic mugs from the communal kitchen, and the faint scent of lavender from the potted plant someone left on my desk. We'd grown, yes, but intentionally, slowly. The company no longer needed to scream its values. We simply lived them. We built technology that protected, not profited from, vulnerable ideas. We launched features not with press releases, but with peer-reviewed papers and open-source transparency. People noticed. A publication once called me the ghost founder who rose from ashes. I smiled at the headline, but I didn't do interviews anymore. I didn't need the spotlight to know I'd won. Our growth was steady, sustainable, ethical. I could sleep again because I wasn't building to prove a point. I was building because it mattered. The scholarship was my idea, quietly launched, no gala, no cameras, just a webpage and a mission to fund underrepresented STEM students who couldn't afford the gatekeepers of innovation. We called it legacy, not ego. The first recipients sent thank you notes handwritten on college-ruled paper. One girl, Amina, wrote, "I thought people like you didn't exist, but now I know you do. And maybe I can be one too." Tasse. That letter stayed pinned to my corkboard next to an old photo of me and my grandfather, soldering wires on a kitchen table. I still lived simply. My mornings began with a stovetop kettle, a splash of oat milk, and the sound of birds fussing over the garden I'd finally tended to. Tomatoes grew uneven but sweet. Basil overtook everything. I found joy in the imperfections, proof that something was alive, changing, rooted. My niece came over more often now. She used to avoid eye contact when my name came up in tech circles, embarrassed by the scandal, confused by the silence. But recently she started asking questions, real ones. How did you know when it was time to act? How did you stay calm? How did you not give up? I never had perfect answers. I just showed her the small things, the USB drive I'd saved like a relic, the garden journal I used as a design sketchbook, the whiteboard with plans that weren't about competition but contribution. Sometimes she'd help me harvest herbs or ask to sit beside me while I reviewed internship applications. I'd catch her scribbling notes when she thought I wasn't looking. The old bitterness. It faded, not because I forgot, but because I no longer carried it. My ex-partner's name showed up in news alerts sometimes, always followed by court dates, fines, apologies that reeked of PR damage control. I didn't read past the headlines. There was nothing left for me there. My justice had already been served, quietly, thoroughly, and completely. One evening, after a long day of meetings and mentoring, I stood in the break room and poured myself a cup of chamomile tea. Outside, the sun dipped behind the city skyline, casting gold through the blinds. I looked up at the wall where I had once hung a photo of the two of us, my former friend and me, arm in arm, eyes full of promise. That photo wasn't there anymore. In its place was a framed line in simple type. I didn't win because I fought back. I won because I never stopped building. And it was true, because in the end, revenge wasn't the legacy. The legacy was peace. You might be wondering, well, what about him? What happens to someone who builds an empire out of stolen bricks? Well, let's just say karma doesn't need a microphone. He used to walk into that cafe like he owned the air inside it. His laugh was loud, his orders precise, his shoes always polished just enough to catch the light when he crossed his legs in the corner booth. He'd hold meetings there, pitching, charming, dominating. That place was once his unofficial kingdom. I used to sit across from him, scribbling designs on napkins while he spun our vision into gold with his words. But that was another life. Now, the air didn't shift when he entered. No one looked up. No one recognized him. I saw him before he saw me. I was already inside, sitting by the window, sipping coffee slowly as the steam curled upward like a quiet flag of victory. He stood outside first, lingering, like someone unsure if they were welcome. His reflection in the glass looked older, the kind of older that comes from collapse, not time. Shoulders hunched, jacket rumpled, eyes darting between the tables like he was searching for something that no longer lived there. When he finally stepped in, he didn't order. He didn't speak. He stood for a moment in the doorway, as if the gravity of the space pressed harder now. His gaze swept the room and landed on me. It stayed there, just long enough. There was no drama, no confrontation, no words, only a flicker of recognition in his eyes and something else underneath. Not regret, not apology, just emptiness. The kind you can't fake, can't hide, can't fill with noise or excuses. The kind that arrives when the lies unravel faster than you can stitch them back together. And I didn't flinch. I didn't smile. I didn't move. I simply held his gaze. I knew what he'd lost. The lawsuits had gutted his finances. He was forced to sell his shares for pennies before the company filed for bankruptcy. His investors turned on him, clawing back every dime they could with legal teeth. The media that once crowned him the new face of tech now used his image in cautionary tales. His LinkedIn profile had been deactivated. His name became radioactive. People whispered it like a lesson, not a legacy. And then there was the family. His wife, who once stood beside him at gala events, wrapped in the success he wore like cologne, had left, quietly, firmly. She took their son with her. They moved states, changed schools, blocked him on every platform. His Christmas photos stopped appearing. His birthday came and went with no post, no party, no reminder that he'd ever been part of someone's home. What struck me most wasn't the poverty of his clothes, or the fatigue in his skin, or even the loneliness in how he stood apart from the world. It was the way he avoided his own reflection. Each time he glanced at a window or a mirror behind the counter, his eyes slid away like they couldn't bear to see the man looking back. The barista greeted him, kindly, like a stranger. And that's what he was now, just another man without a kingdom. He finally took a step toward the counter, then paused again. And in that pause, I saw it. The flicker of shame. It wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. Shame like that hums in the bones. When he looked at me again, I gave him the smallest of nods. Not of forgiveness, not of pity, just acknowledgement. I saw him. I remembered. And I had moved on. He lowered his eyes and left. No order, no conversation, just silence trailing behind him like a coat too heavy to carry anymore. I watched as he walked down the street, slow, unsure, out of sync with the world around him. No one turned. No one followed. The world had let him go, not in anger, but in indifference. He hadn't been destroyed by me. He'd been undone by himself. And nothing is louder than the silence of your own making. And now comes the part that stays with you. Because what he lost matters less than what I chose to leave behind. Stay with me. You'll want to hear this. The blog post wasn't planned. It came one evening after a long, quiet day filled with the kind of meetings that don't make headlines. Mentorship sessions with students, back-end architecture reviews, and a short walk around the block just to smell the rain-soaked air. There was nothing dramatic about it. No announcement, no teaser, no PR strategy. I simply opened a blank document and began to write. I titled it, The Code They Can't Steal. It wasn't technical. It wasn't about architecture or frameworks or patent disputes. It was about ethics, about why we build, about what's left when people take everything you've made, wear your work like a badge, and still somehow sleep at night. It was about dignity and silence and what you learn when the world stops clapping and starts forgetting your name. I wrote about betrayal, yes, but not with bitterness. I wrote about the moment I realized that being erased didn't mean I had disappeared, that being quiet didn't mean I was finished, that somewhere underneath the scars and spreadsheets, there was something no one could patent, pitch, or steal: conviction. I wrote, They stole my idea, but they couldn't recreate the soul behind it, because code can be copied, vision can be mimicked, but purpose? That has to be lived. I didn't think much of it. I hit publish and closed my laptop. The next morning, my inbox was full. Hundreds of messages from anonymous founders, burned-out interns, teachers, investors, even a few former colleagues who admitted they never had the courage to stand up. Some messages were angry, others were grateful. Many simply said, Thank you. I needed this. The post went viral in circles I never expected. Startup forums, university classrooms, even internal newsletters of companies that had once shut me out. A well-known ethics professor requested to include it in her syllabus. A tech podcast read it aloud on air. But it wasn't fame I felt. It was something deeper, like planting a seed and seeing it bloom somewhere you didn't expect. That blog became more than a post. It became a mirror for others, and maybe even for me. Weeks later, someone framed the quote and sent it to our office. I found it waiting on my desk one morning, wrapped in brown paper with no note. Just the words in black type, "You can steal an idea, but you can't fake a soul." I hung it on the wall next to the whiteboard, not to gloat, but to remind myself of what survived. The fire didn't destroy me. It refined me. These days, my schedule is full, but my heart is light. I still work hard. I still care deeply, but I no longer chase validation. The company runs on a culture of integrity and mentorship. We have a foundation now that provides grants to underserved inventors, quietly helping others who were once like me, brilliant, but blocked. I call it the Real Code Fund. We don't advertise it much. We just do the work. Sometimes my niece helps with the paperwork. She's grown into a thoughtful young woman, curious, cautious, but strong. The other day she asked me, "Do you ever wish it didn't happen?" I paused, then smiled. "No," I said. "I just wish I'd known sooner that being underestimated is a gift. It gives you the space to rebuild without their noise." That night, after the office emptied and the city lights softened to a low hum, I stayed behind, made a cup of jasmine tea, sat by the window. The whiteboard still bore the faint outlines of a new idea, something fresh, maybe ambitious, maybe not. It didn't matter. What mattered was that I still had the hunger to build, but no longer from pain. Now, from peace. Outside, the wind rustled through the tree leaves. Somewhere, a neighbor's wind chimes sang low and offbeat. The office smelled faintly of wood polish and tea. And in that stillness, I knew this was my legacy. Not the headlines, not the empire, not even the revenge. Just this, truth lived out loud, even in silence. I glanced at the framed quote once more, then looked back at the board, lifted my marker, and drew the first line of something new. A soft, content smile formed at the corner of my lips, because the truth was simple, powerful, and permanent. You can steal an idea, but you can't fake a soul. Thank you for staying with me through this journey. If my story moved you, leave a comment below. I read every one. And if you want to hear more stories like this, don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay with us.